Join us as we dive deep with real indie filmmakers, those creating outside the studio system, sharing raw, unfiltered stories about their artistic vision, personal growth, and spiritual evolution. This isn't about Hollywood's version of indie, it's about the true heart and hustle of independent artistry, where bold dreams meet purpose and art defines the journey. I'm Adrienne Acevedo Lovett.
And I'm John A. Rice.
And this is Real Indie.
Today's guest is Laurie Collyer. Welcome. Laurie Collyer is a filmmaker living in Brooklyn, a graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, alumnus of the Sundance Screenwriters and Directors Labs, and the Cannes Film Festival's Cine Foundation Residence for Emerging Filmmakers. Collyer has been making movies and television for 25 years. Some writing and directing credits include Billions, Sherrybaby, Nuyorican Dream, Sunlight Jr., The Secret Life of Marilyn Monroe, and Furlough.
Welcome!
Thank
Yay!
you.
Thank you for
guys
being here,
for having
Laurie.
me.
Of course. So we know each other because you've cast me in one of your films back in the day, Sunlight Jr. It was my first big role in a feature film, so you opened that door for me personally, and it's been a ride ever since, and you've been a true inspiration to my career as a filmmaker and as an actor. So you really did open a door for me, and at a time where no one was casting someone who looks like me. So thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for being in Sunlight Jr. and kicking so much ass in that role of Vivian, named after my mother.
Right.
I still carry a little bit of that, guilt that we talked about when we had lunch the other day, like making you audition more than 2 times.
Oh my gosh.
But it was really fun. You're super fun to direct, and I love seeing you on social media, all the roles that you book and all the films that you direct, and you're really inspiring me. So
thank you. That means a lot.
just...
Thank you.
And I saw the movie and you were both great. You both did a great job.
That was the last film that I wrote and directed.
Really?
And yeah, it's 10 years old.
Wow.
And I've just been spending the last 3 years trying to, stockpiling work, screenplays, 1 television pilot, several pitches, trying to get back to authoring my own work, because that's really what I started off wanting to do.
Yeah, you had written and directed all of your films prior to Sunlight Jr., right?
Well, there was only 2. There was Nuyorican Dream was a doc. I mean, it was written, Robert and I, the subject and I, wrote the voiceover together, and I did have to write a treatment for the film, when raising money. So, but I don't know that we even have a writing credit on the movie itself, because it is a doc. And then Sherrybaby and Sunlight Jr. And then after that, I just tried to make my way in television, and we can talk about that, in more detail later.
And so, I always like to kind of highlight people's backgrounds, but specifically if you were the black sheep of your family, or if you come from an artist family. And so do you come from that, or was it more of you're the only one?
Well, I like that question because I do think where you come from plays a role in how you make your way through this industry. And so I'm not from an artist family at all, although my mom was a chef. She's, retired now. And my husband was like, your mom's an artist? I'm like, she's a cook. And I'm not the black sheep, although I thought I was. It turns out I wasn't. The secrets reveal themselves through, your life. But I did like that question because not coming from an artist family, not coming from an industry family, not having a huge chip on my shoulder and something to prove, that burning drive that some people have.
Right.
that could come from being a black sheep, I think. I think I was very naive going in about the role of money and power in the business. And I went in like as a film student who wanted to make art. I wanted to make like social realist films. I was very idealistic, and I really didn't pay that much attention. I took certain things for granted, I think, in the beginning, because I did have this like prestige-y background. And I was like, oh, you know, I have my second, you know, my first narrative feature, my second feature film, got into Sundance. I'm in the industry now. It's fine. I don't, you know, I'll just do my thing.
Right.
And there is a certain amount of like playing the game that I think every aspiring filmmaker, producer, actor, anyone, you know, above the line has to learn how to play. And so that's sort of a lesson that came to me a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important point to make, because I think a lot of filmmakers, young filmmakers, emerging filmmakers, think that something like Sundance is going to be the golden ticket.
Yeah.
And then they go to Sundance and realize what it is.
And they're standing online in the 10-degree weather trying to get into some giant party where it takes an hour to get a drink because it's so crowded and nobody wants to talk to you because you're not famous. And,
Right.
You know? Yeah. Even despite that, I still thought, I'm in the industry now. Yeah, and so I think people have an advantage, obviously coming from, you know, families that are industry families, number one. And I know everyone throws around this term Nepo baby. I don't really know what that means. Like, are you a Nepo baby if your dad is an executive, or are you Nepo baby if your dad is a celebrity? Like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't really care. The point is you're going to understand the business of it just
Right.
through us, having been raised in that world. And I think it's also true that people who come from like powerful families, like if your parent is a politician or a lawyer or, you know, just somebody with a shitload of money, you just sort of like through osmosis have picked up like how to deal with power and powerful people. I did not really have that skill.
Sure.
And so, you know, it's, you live and learn. It's fine. This is something I've told all my students. So it's why I you know, when I saw that question, I was like, oh, you know, because I always want someone to learn something. You know, that's another question you guys had. Like, what do you want people to get out of your work? You know,
Yeah.
I always want people to, you know, learn something.
And do you feel like your background has influenced the types of stories you'd like to tell?
For sure. I mean, you know, I kind of find myself, when I look deeply at my work, like I realize that I'm like telling the same story over and over again. But Spike Lee said that in the She's Gotta Have It behind the scenes book that he wrote. Spike Lee's Gotta Have It. Yeah, he says basically the same thing, like all author directors kind of tell the same story. But so there's a lot of struggle, there's addiction, there's sexual violence. Like, yeah, I know about all that stuff, and it always like rears its ugly head in the work. But again, not to sort of sensationalize it or like sort of like weirdly get off on it like some directors might do. I like to use these stories to create empathy, you know. But yeah, I have always, I guess, you know, the marginalized people thing always drew me. I am not a marginalized person, so, you know, that's where the fiction comes in. But
do you feel like as a person you connect to marginalized people, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of your stories kind of highlight them?
I must, right?
Because for me, you're a very down-to-earth, real person, genuine, empathetic, and I feel like because that's the type of person you are, you have a more understanding for people who are, you know, coming from that kind of world.
Well, you know, my parents grew up in a very blue-collar background. They're both, and my husband's parents too. It's interesting because we have the same sociology. We have parents who were raised by, you know, uneducated, sort of factory working types who, like, you know, ascended the social class ladder.
Which is very present in your work.
So
Right.
class always plays a role in my work as well, because I'm very conscious, like, you know, my whole life going to Brooklyn for Sunday dinner with my family, that we were living a different life in our little suburban New Jersey world, which we talked about when we met for lunch that time.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, so that definitely has played a role. I think for any writer-director, there's like a lot of personal elements in the work, and some of it I like to talk about, and some of it I like to be like, just watch the movie. I'm not telling you.
Right. Makes sense.
You have to maintain some mystique.
There's some tough stuff in there. Like, oh, this is not a therapy
Right.
session. You don't want to know about, you know, my trauma.
Right.
You really don't. They don't either. But I do like to create empathy for characters who've been like wronged. You know, that's definitely like a line that I'm on.
Yeah.
But my new film is set in a very upper middle class world, and it just feels really right for me right now.
Oh, that's amazing. What is it called?
It's called Landslide, and it's a thriller about two sisters. One is a sort of trophy wife, stay-at-home mom, living in a giant Victorian in Ditmas Park, married to a commercial director. And the other one is an emergency room doctor. So they're definitely, you know, class-wise in a very particular, specific world. And it's maybe the first time I've written that world, which is my world. It's weird. But anyway, yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yes.
What stage
I think it's
is
good.
it? Where is it in the process?
We're trying to attach talent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a producer. Scott Franklin's producing. I've known him for 15 years. Sunlight Jr., he was attached to produce when Rachel Weisz was playing Mel. But then she couldn't do it. She booked some big studio movie, and I got Naomi. And
How has the landscape of funding an indie film like that changed since you first started? I imagine it's got to be completely different,
well,
right?
I haven't tried to fund an indie film, you know, or get an indie film funded in a long time, because I had these enormous student loans. And at a certain point, and two kids, and at a certain point I was like, I gotta make some money. You know, after Sunlight Jr., I was like, I gotta make some money. So I got this miniseries, I booked a miniseries for a Lifetime, very well paid job, very exciting challenge. I, you know, directed crew, worked on set for like 60 days. It was so much fun, and I learned so much. And then, you know, I just did episodic TV. I did one indie film, but I was a director for hire, so I didn't really have to do the whole dance that I'm doing now. It came with talent. It came with Melissa Leo and Tessa Thompson. So I can't answer that from direct experience, but from what I can tell from other directors I know, through meeting different people over time, that some, you know, indie directors, they start their careers financing their own movies.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know was a thing. It's
We did that.
kind of a thing.
It is a thing.
Yeah, I just never.
Yeah. And then, you know, because you talked about your network's work, in comparison to that network studio system and the indie world, what are like the major differences you feel? I mean, besides the obvious of money.
Yeah, you get residuals
Right.
from, you know, cable TV and network TV. That's who I worked for most recently. The differences, there's a huge difference in terms of what directing is. I haven't directed pilots, so I'm only speaking to either episodic directing, and then the miniseries I directed, I did all 4 episodes. So I'm not really talking about the miniseries. But with episodic directing, you're a guest first and foremost. You're in charge in terms of, like, you're directing the actors, you're directing the camera, but you're not setting the look for the series.
Right.
So you don't engage much with production design or costume design, which I always, you know, feel like I'm missing an appendage, you know.
Right.
And of course, you know, you scout, you choose locations, and that's a big part of production design. But aside from that, you're not, you're not talking about color palette, you're not building sets with the design team, and same goes for costume and wardrobe. They show you the looks, they give you your options, but you're not in the room pulling, or directing them initially, like this is, this character and this is how I think they should dress. So that's different. And then because of the schedules, you cannot go overtime in television. You'll never get hired again. So the schedules are really tight. Also, you're shooting 5 to 10 pages a day. Whereas in feature film, you're shooting 2 to 4 pages a day. So you really are on a clip. And because of that, the director needs to come to every single setup, with their own blocking plan. And I had only collaborated with my actors in the past and said, oh, so here's here's our location, here's our set, this is what the scene is about, this is what I think you should be doing in the scene. How do you think you would move through the space? No, that does not happen in television.
Right.
Wow, it sounds like a
At
completely
all.
inorganic process.
So the blocking everything myself, initially felt very strange and sort of like what a quote unquote real director does. You know what I mean? Like you're sort of directing traffic. You're like, okay, go from here and say this line here and do this.
Yeah. There's almost a theatrical aspect to that, because when you're directing theater, and I've directed both theater and indie film, and coming from theater, it is that much of okay, this is the blocking for this scene, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here. So there's some kind of familiarity for me, personally.
Yeah.
And that
That's
was something
great.
I witnessed when I was shadowing a little bit in TV.
Yeah. So I never directed theater, so it was new to me. But no, I mean, I get it. And it's important to, too much talk is not ideal either. The collaborations should fall somewhere in the middle of, I don't know, what do you think? And here's what we're doing. It has to land somewhere in the middle.
Right.
In television, and I think this is true for studio features as well, you're working for someone else.
Right, I was going to ask that. Yeah.
And so, I had to get used to producers tapping me on the shoulder and saying, why don't you get her to go again? When I thought, oh, we got that on that take, let's move on. No, ask her to go again. And at first I bristled, I was like, why is she telling me what to do?
Right.
This is what I'm saying. I was so naive. and not in a bitchy way, but protective, this is my, art and craft, and that's a money person. What? But I got over that. I got over that pretty quick. You work on some TV shows and there's a very specific requirement for coverage. So if you have to cover every eye line in 5 size shots, it really impacts your shot list, You can't do it in a oneer. Can't do anything in a oneer. So you're working for someone else. And then in indie film, you're much more leading the charge.
Yeah, it's your entire creative vision. You're the captain 100%.
Yeah, and you have very strong, real, deep relationships with all your department heads.
Right. And do you prefer that over,
I do.
I
do. I love making movies. I mean, I went to film school. I didn't go to TV school.
Right.
Sure. So do you think a healthy career is a balance of doing, your passion projects and then your money-making projects?
Sure. I think here's the thing. This is the other thing, too, about, growing out of your naivete. There's always going to be moments in people's careers where they're up, and there's always going to be moments where they're down. And that's just the way it goes. But a healthy career would ideally be that you're working consistently throughout your career. And of course, making money, not necessarily a lot, but that you're working consistently. And that's hard. That's really hard, you know? And there are a lot of people who find themselves working consistently in television, and they always wanted to make movies. Like I've heard a lot of that.
I've heard that too.
In my, you know, different like WGA, DGA groups, you know, events, networking, you know, I've heard people, it's, you know, like the golden handcuffs phenomenon of,
Right.
but, you know, they're working, I think the healthy career is just steadily working.
Right. And because there is such a up and down in our careers in this industry, basically any kind of thing that grounds you and like any kind of ritualistic things that you do for yourself as a person to find that balance when everything's kind of wonky and you're waiting for the next gig or whatever the case may be.
Well, I don't have a religious practice of any kind, but I'm extremely dialed into nature, and the older I get, the harder it is for me to not be in it at least, you know, once or twice a week. And living in New York City makes that a challenge. But so anyway, it actually happened through working on a movie. I was hired to rewrite the script, Luna, which was about an activist in Northern California in the late 90s who did a tree sit in a redwood tree to protest the logging of the redwood forest. And she sat up there for 2 years. Her name was Julia Butterfly Hill.
Wow.
And so the script was, you know, $25 million movie. The producers hired me to turn it into a $10 million movie, and Rachel Weisz was attached. And that was another project I had with Scott. And through researching the story, meeting Julia, going out to Northern California, where I had friends also, in Mendocino County, this whole world, like I would say, reopened to me, because I feel like when I was a little tiny kid, I used to play in the woods all the time. And so that was like 2008, 2009. And after that, I just became really like addicted to camping and hiking, just laying out, you know, like the beach in the summer, the wood, you know, however I could get my like nature infusion.
We did that during the height of the pandemic. We kind of ran off and lived in the woods and log cabins, and we're camping a lot. And there's something healing. I mean, obviously healing about nature.
Super healing.
And at that time, we felt like we needed that. Like we needed that kind of literal grounding. And so, yeah, that's a beautiful way to kind of find some kind of balance in this roller coaster of an industry.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're not that important. And the thing is about Hollywood, Hollyweird, whatever, entertainment, film and television is, you know, there's a lot of awards ceremonies, and there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of money. So it can really trick you into thinking that it's like the most important thing. And I think in order to be successful, you kind of do have to think it's the most important thing, at least at some point, probably the beginning of your career. But you know, I've taken some hits, like in terms of not working on things that were creatively fulfilling, or not having ideal relationships all the time with my collaborators. Those are the hits. Right. When I say I've taken some hits. And it's been really, really helpful to, I remember my producer said to me on Sherrybaby, you know, Laurie, we're not curing cancer. You know, we're just like, fucking take it down a notch. We're not curing cancer. You know, she's from Israel. She's like, this isn't a war. You know, I've lived through that. That's not this. You're just making a movie. So, you know, the one big thing that I learned over these years is, yes, I need to be in the woods or be at the beach or be in the desert. And the other thing is that family is just so important. And I think I really took that for granted. You know, when I was younger, I think all young people do. Now my kids are like 20 and 17. I see them, they don't get it, you know. I mean, I think my 20-year-old does more, but yeah. that's, there are things more important than getting your movie made.
Right, I agree. I feel like this is something that I've learned personally through age.
Yeah, it's definitely an aging thing.
It is, because my mentality in my 20s was very like, nothing but the industry, and then in my 30s it kind of like split, because I went from a theater world to a TV and film world, so then it was still kind of nothing but the industry. But then my family and friends have been such an important impact in my personal life, and just spending time with them, drawing from inspiration for my art, all the things. I always tell people, you have to live a life to portray a life.
Yes.
And so it's so important to not get so like obsessively bogged down from the industry and trying to make it. I think
you have to have something to say.
Exactly.
You have to have lived some
exactly
kind of a life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think from that, I feel like that's where your art form becomes very authentic, your voice becomes authentic, the stories are clearer, they're more of an impact to people, So I think there's a lot of benefits to that, but a lot of indie filmmakers are so like, I gotta make it, I gotta keep day and night, gotta work on it. And I feel like it's okay to give yourself breaks. Like I even have a time of day where I stop. And I'm like, I am not touching anything about my art. And I'm just being here, present with my husband.
Yes.
Just let's go and see a movie, or let's go and go to a restaurant. Just normal things, And I think
you have to live your life.
You need that to help with the possibility of burnout. And with, one of the questions is, how do you personally deal with burnout when it happens?
I smoke a lot of pot. I mean, burnout. I haven't had an experience with burnout recently, because now I'm trying to get back into like grind mode. I mean, I've been writing, but when you don't have a deadline and someone's not paying you, you take time out to like take care of your elderly mother, or clean your house or whatever. I have fire, I make my own deadlines, but it does go slower. Yes. But in the past, I don't know that I've always been healthy, and I know I was joking when I said that, but I kind of wasn't joking when I said that. I do find myself, the marijuana intake goes up when I'm burning out, which is not healthy. I mean, the thing that I did is I made my first like narrative feature. Doc features are really different in terms of like the attention you get and the money you make, and even back to Sundance, like if you're there with a narrative feature versus a doc feature, at least in the old days, you were way at the bottom of the ladder, and there were parties that you wouldn't get into or be invited to, and swag that you would not have access to. It's like,
it's so strange,
the ugly stepchild, and it sucks. But I do think there have been changes over time since I premiered my doc a gazillion years ago.
Documentaries are so popular
they're commercial. They're much more commercial. They're more respected. I went to Sundance. Totally single, Sherrybaby. I made my first narrative feature with a movie star and my first child at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So I actually had this experience of like, what do I pick up? Do I pick up the baby? Do I pick up the phone?
Oh my gosh.
And I picked up the baby.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's a great way to start a career, It's so funny, we were watching this Netflix show, Chef's Table, about making noodles. I don't know, we're a bunch of cooking geeks in my family. And this woman in China who's like brought Xi'an noodles to London, like period. She changed like food culture in London, single-handedly. She's amazing. At one point she found out she was pregnant, and she talks about that in the documentary, and she says, I don't spend much time with my daughter. And when the daughter was like 7 or 8, she put her in a boarding school. And she's like, because I have to work, you know, I have to do this thing, right? And I'm putting her in the best schools, I'm making all this money, I'm making a huge difference for my daughter. And my daughter is sitting here going, oh my God, what is she doing, you know? She's not with her kid at all. And I didn't want to say it, and I didn't say it. You have to choose. You have to choose. You can't do both full time. You know, you can't like change food culture in, you know, a major European city or direct a film and like give your child all the nurturing they need.
Sure.
So I've enjoyed a lot of my downtime because that's time I get to be a mom.
Right.
Because I feel like if I had been working steadily, you know, the past 25 years, just always directing, always writing, my kids would have been raised by nannies. And it just isn't my style. And you know, I know plenty of kids who were raised by nannies or people raising their kids with nannies. It's just not what I would have wanted, but I don't judge it. I really don't.
Right. Oh, of course. I mean,
You can't.
And
But you do have to choose. I think you do have to choose.
that's an interesting perspective too, because I feel like a lot of female filmmakers teeter-totter with that, you know, in regards to having a family and being in this industry, and sometimes it feels like you have to choose one or the other. But it is possible to do both, but know that one is going to kind of have to pull back while you're focusing on the other.
Exactly.
Well, there's only so much of yourself that you have to give.
That's
exactly
You know?
correct.
Exactly.
And like days on set are long ass days, you know, it's 12 hours of shooting. But if you're the director, you get there an hour early. You know, you get to leave at wrap. You're not a PA, like that's something you don't want to do and have a baby.
Right.
But you're still working 14 hours a day, 13, 14 hours a day.
Right.
And, you know, then you're doing calls on all your breaks and stuff like that. So even when when I was in Canada directing the miniseries, I couldn't FaceTime my kids that much.
Right.
Just, you know, like all my lunches, I was on the phone with Lifetime. And I remember I tried to have a boundary around that, and they were like, are you fucking crazy? I was like, this is my lunch hour. And they're like, what?
That's crazy.
You don't get a lunch hour.
And so,
oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so it sounds like you're almost now like grateful for downtime, or I feel like a lot of, especially younger viewers, freak out when there's downtime, but it allows you to return to those grounding things.
We have like a weirdly close family. Like my kids.
That's great though.
And my husband and me, we're really tight.
That's
we
really
spend
great,
a lot
though.
of time together. Like we'll just hang out on weekends, and my kids, neither one of them is overly social. I mean, they're not introverts, but some of my friends, teenagers, are out all the time. You know, they just come in to shower and sleep. But no, we hang out.
That's so
It
great.
might be weird.
Though. That's so great.
My daughter's going to college next year, but anyway.
And so the last question I have for you, and you kind of touched upon it earlier, but what would you like your audiences to take away from your work?
So yeah, you know what? So I didn't plan to be an artist of any kind, to make films, to take photographs. I just sort of fell into it as like a hobby thing when I was living in San Francisco after college, trying to become a social worker. So the first film that I directed that like went to festivals, and there were small festivals around the world, not Sundance yet, was about one of my clients' students in a public school. I was working in the resource special ed classroom, and this very severely disabled girl was mainstreamed into our school. And she had this like computer attached to her wheelchair that was an electric wheelchair, and so she talked with the computer, kind of like Stephen Hawking, that famous physicist. And you know, she moved with her little joystick on the wheelchair, but she needed to be fed, she needed to be bathroomed, she needed to be walked up and down the hallway. That was one of my jobs, walk her up and down the hallway at lunchtime just to get her limbs moving.
Sure.
She was very severely disabled. And so I got an assignment. I was taking classes, like I said, hobby style, at City College, and I got assignment to make a short film, a Super 8 film about a chair. And I was like, Ton, her chair. It's like a race car. And so I made a short Super 8 film, and everyone in the class was like, you need to make a longer film. I made a longer film, and then, that's when the change started to happen. I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. But I always wanted to take the social work with me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make movies that would open people's eyes to some kind of injustice or some kind of character that they had assumptions about, and then their assumptions could be changed. Like, for example, Ton, basically like a perfect mind trapped in a, even saying trapped, it sounds so condescending. Her mind, like, having her address the camera directly, using her computer, talking about how lonely she gets and how, her day changes when she goes to school and she can use her computer and talk to people and connect with people. And she talks, in this very deep way about needing connection. And I just felt like that was so important. Like, we don't hear from these people in mainstream media. So I was very committed to making social realist films coming out of having wanted to be a social worker.
That makes sense. So
I like to create empathy, understanding, right the wrongs.
Right.
Always trying to right the wrongs.
Well, and it shows in your other films. It's a reflection of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, Sunlight Jr. is about abortion and poverty, and I made it during the Obama administration. Honestly, I feel like if I had made that under the Trump administration, more people would have seen it. Because under the Obama administration, all the liberal, not all, we were very well reviewed, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, NPR, LA Times even. But there were the select few that were like, oh God, this is so bleak. Like, that was the negative review. It wasn't like, this is a bad movie. It was like, this is too bleak, too bleak. And, and then here we are now. It's like,
right.
Bleak much?
Right.
It was
shit's
easy,
bleak.
It was easy to convince ourselves during that time that things were maybe not as precarious as they are.
And look at us now. Their entire states, they're abortion deserts. So I still do have this fantasy. I'm not everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and I'm not like the get my film out on the road myself filmmaker. I wish I was. And maybe I will be when these kids are finally gone. But I do have this fantasy of bringing sunlight, because I did want to talk across the aisle. I didn't make it in a red state. I made it about red state people. I mean, it's the white working poor, mainly. Obviously, it's Florida, so there's a whole spectrum of race and demographic. But Naomi and Naomi's character, Matt's character, Norman's character. Anyway, to have a conversation with people on the ground about abortion, and why she made the choice she did. And I think it's pretty obvious, like, that kid's gonna be living in a car.
Right.
What kind of life is that?
And I mean, it's
and I remember
real.
one of the directions I gave Naomi when she was talking to Richie about, I don't know if I want to have this baby. It was from a scene that got cut, actually. But I said to her, I whispered to her, I go, imagine your baby sitting in the middle of that parking lot out there playing, And she was like, okay.
That reality.
And nailed it. She did so many times.
Yeah.
Such a good actress.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, so my interest in film, they screened that first film about Ton, this severely disabled young woman, at the Bridge School benefit concert that Neil Young used to throw with his wife Peggy to raise money for the Bridge School, which was, they created this school with some educators because they had a child with very severe disabilities like Ton's. And so every October at the Shoreline Amphitheater, they had this huge concert, and many, many bands would come. Pearl Jam came, Sonic Youth came, like Tom Petty, like huge, you know, it was Neil Young throwing the concert. Anyway, so they screened Ton. It was the first time they screened a film at a Bridge School benefit concert. It was my 27th birthday, and like this shit went so big in front of 22,000 people, and all these extreme close-ups, like I said, of her like typing, taking her time, one finger at a time, you know, talking about, you know, what's going on inside, you know, like her heart. And I turned to my boyfriend and I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I wanna do. This is more powerful than like, you know, working within the system.
And you've done it ever since?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what got me into NYU was that little film. I didn't think, I don't know if you guys, you're younger than me, I didn't think screens would be so ubiquitous. Like I didn't think this, I'm still kind of surprised how much media people ingest, myself included.
Yeah.
It's odd.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your
Thank
work.
you,
Joy to
guys.
have. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. Good to see
I
you
hope,
again.
I hope it was good.
Next time we need the purple hair to come back.
That's what my manager said.
Thanks for tuning in to Real Indie. If today's conversation sparked something in you, like it, share it, and keep creating. This episode was brought to you by The Garage Productions and Man of the Crowd Productions, where purpose meets storytelling and stories are made from the ground up. Until next time, keep it real, keep it indie.